Hola, buenos dias. In case you haven't worked out, I'm trying to speak Spanish not very well. I'm 2,200 meters above sea level right now, at the foot of Tede, the highest point in the whole of Spain. I'm having a nosy at some foreign roads. Wanna come with me? Hello again. It's been a roller coaster few months in my life, as always. Nothing's ever straightforward, is it? I feel like I'm in a bit of a drama there, but we're okay. So for those who don't know, I travelled away to Tenerife, which is not normally somewhere I would have considered having a holiday, but my friends insisted I should try it out, and this being the era of try new things since my father passed away, it's like, okay, I'll do it. So out we came, and I was always a little bit anxious about whether I'd enjoy it out here, because I know it can feel a bit like Brits abroad, and I'm not a huge fan of that sort of holiday experience, but I've got here and I have to say I'm a convert. I have fallen in love with this island. I was gonna try and do a load of sort of highway content while I was here, but that didn't happen because I was just enjoying the vibe of being on this island so much. I went and hired a car for 3 days, and I was just so breathtaken by the highways that I travelled on. I didn't really stop to do the filming I was going to do. So what I'm going to do instead is give you a nice little review of what I've seen and done traffic-wise and highways-wise, and a bit like the holiday programme. You know, the one that was hosted by Frank Boff, only without me ending up in a dungeon bit afterwards. So shall we crack on? I found hiring a car was very easy because the hotel I was staying in had a car hire desk within it. So it took me no hassle whatsoever. Got the car and was off on the road within half an hour. So the first thing to bear in mind when you start driving in Tenerife is that, as it is part of Spain, all Spanish traffic laws do apply. What I would say though is I'd be very careful if you haven't driven on the wrong side of a car before, like I haven't. I've driven on the wrong side of the road before. I find driving on the right hand side of the road fairly easy, but I've always done it in a right hand drive vehicle. I've always had my own car. There's only so many times you can try to change gear by opening a window before you learn that you're an idiot and should check that the gear lever is on the opposite side. But once we got over that hurdle, a bit of a blast up and down the autopistas and whatnot, I found it very enjoyable. Although I would say that one thing you do need to be really cautious of when driving in Tenerife is some of the motorway interchanges are extremely tight. I thought France had some incredibly tight junction designs which involve very slow speed loops, but no, in Tenerife, because of the terrain, you know, I've got to remember we're on the side of a volcano, you have junctions that are pretty much a standing start into 120 kilometre traffic. However, drivers are generally okay. They will move across and let you in unless it's rush hour, and oh my, I thankfully avoided the worst of the rush hours on Tenerife because I picked the higher card time days sensibly. I used the weekend, but they have to be seen to be believed. It makes Manchester look a bit of a free-flowing paradise sometimes. Another thing I particularly enjoyed out here is the quality of the roads. Yes, I know I've said that on the autopista some of the interchanges are a little bit hair-raising, but you're not taken totally by surprise. But even the smaller roads are so well maintained. If you go through Tede National Park, for instance, some of the roads over that mountain are absolutely stunning. And given that they get hammered by winter weather compared to the rest of the island, they're really well maintained. You travel over a moorland road in the north of England and it's probably very similar to driving on the moon, but not out here. A little bit annoying, isn't it, to think that yet again infrastructure in the UK is just an afterthought. I always point out, I was always told by somebody who worked in a council that, believe it or not, it's not the quality of your tourist destinations, it's not the quality of your hotels, it's not the quality of your toilets that make people remember an area, it's their travelling experience in and out. So if the roads look a mess, people think the town and country therefore is a mess. That's why it was really heartening to see that Any litter that had been left on the side of the road was picked up pretty quickly by street sweeping gangs. Again, you know, you look at some of the trash-strewn streets back home, and it's just irritating, the lack of civic pride. It's okay, I know some of the quirkier parts of Manchester aren't exactly tourist destinations, but they could at least be swept up once in a while, couldn't they? I did like that around Costa Adeje as well. There are still some fairly old traffic signs which still reference the original road numbering system that was used in Spain prior to the regionalisation. So for example, TF28, which is like the original main road before the Autopista del Sur was built, used to be the C822. Now, I can't imagine that many tourists would know or care about that, but I picked it up immediately, because one thing I do like about old Spanish road signs is they are virtually identical to the pre-1982 French style road signs. Some very good little old signs to spot. I enjoyed that. Must point out though, Tenerife is a very car-dependent island. There are no railways on Tenerife, although Santa Cruz does have a tram network that connects up to La Laguna, and that was quite fun to see. The layout of that tram network as well, it put some of the British ones to shame. You know, you had the grass tramways, everything was segregated, there's very little on-street running. So unlike, say, the Manchester Metrolink, which is brought to a complete standstill every time some numpty leaves a van on Cross Street, the Tenerife tram keeps moving. It's great. Didn't get a chance to ride it, unfortunately, but that just means I've got an excuse to come back if you ask my opinion. However, if you don't drive on Tenerife, one thing that is worth noting is that the buses run by the amusingly named Titsa are frequent, clean, and all the Autopista junctions have a bus stop. So it's almost like an express bus service in comparison. Imagine being able to just get on a bus that went around the M60 so you didn't have to travel all the way into the city zone to come back out. Speed limits in Tenerife. On the autopistas, generally 120 kilometres, although it does reduce to 100 or even 90. In town, I have noticed that 40 kilometres seems to be the norm. There are some 50 limits and there are a lot of 30 limits. You'll also find that pedestrian crossings are frequent. Obviously a lot of tree-lined streets as well, so there's a lot of shade. You just got to be careful that some of the footpaths do have tree pits that you could potentially fall in and hurt your ankles on. They're not quite as good at keeping footways unobstructed, but overall the walking experience is more pleasant than back home. The uneven levels of footways are lower. There aren't as many stupid hazards placed around him, and the only thing you've got to look out for are signposts and streetlights. There's very few advertising hoardings blocking a walking route, for example, so that's a plus. One thing I'm not keen on is there's a little bit of a tendency to over-regulate road marking. So roundabouts have lanes marked out that don't spiral. So I obviously go into autopilot and treat it as if I would back home and left-hand lane and then move across. Don't do that. Drivers out here will just take the path of least resistance across the roundabout, regardless of what the road markings say. It would probably be better if roundabouts weren't marked out with any lanes at all and were just left as a circulatory carriageway. I'll also say that if you like tunnels, Tenerife is going to be an island you'll enjoy. TF5 alone seems to have more tunnels than the whole of Scotland and Wales combined. Santa Cruz has a number of tunnels, which would put Birmingham to shame. I'm a big fan of tunnels. You probably gathered that if you've seen some of my other content. And most of these tunnels have only been built in the last 20 years. If you look at Google Earth's historical imagery, for example, you'll see a very different road network to what exists today. This particular tunnel you can see this footage of, for example, under the Plaza de España. This used to all be ground level. The road's now underneath it and the famous square above has been pedestrianised. Much better. We could learn a thing or two here, couldn't we? This is what Great Ancourt Street should have looked like, but there we go. What we got instead was the fake Euro Boulevard, whereas this is what a real Euro Boulevard looks like. I would like to say at this point, here's a thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi. If you wish to join those lovely people who are listed on screen right now, the details to do so are on screen as well. Can I just say that I always appreciate my viewers, and if you've found this channel from various parts of the internet, welcome, and if you haven't, thank you for coming back, and I will hopefully catch you soon. Take care everyone, safe travels, bye bye.